You have made the cut. You severed ties with your friends, your family, perhaps even your closest companion. The world immediately assigns labels: depressed, broken, perhaps pathologically antisocial. But what if this radical isolation is not evidence of a collapse? What if it is, instead, the genesis of the profound psychological awakening that Carl Jung deemed both terrifying and essential? This distinct psychological mechanism functions as the great separator, delineating those who slumber from those who have awakened. Once you truly grasp its nature, you will never perceive loneliness the same way again. While contemporary culture diagnoses isolation as pathology, a flaw requiring immediate correction, Jung offered a radically different perspective. He termed this process individuation. The moment a man cuts everyone off is rarely a sign of mental illness. It is a primal, subconscious defense erected against what Jung clinically defined as collective psychosis. Group dysfunction. The madness of crowds pretending to be sane. You are not lonely. You are experiencing a psychological allergy to fundamental inauthenticity. Your nervous system is rejecting the poison everyone else calls socializing. Throughout his extensive clinical work, Jung observed this pattern repeatedly. Men came to his practice presenting not with conventional symptoms of distress, but with something far more subtle, a profound and necessary disconnection from the social ecosystem they had previously inhabited. These were not men who had failed at relationships. These were men who had succeeded at them for years, decades even, before an undeniable shift occurred within their core. Jung recognized this transition as one of the most significant psychological developments a person can undergo, yet it was invariably misinterpreted by those around them. Consider the moment this shift occurred, the clarity event. You were seated among people you had known for years, colleagues, relatives, lifelong friends, and suddenly, the illusion dissolved. You perceived the latent mechanism beneath the connection. Every exchange felt transactional. Every gesture of affection seemed a practiced performance. Relationships were sustained not by mutual genuine liking, but by tolerated utility, a web where individuals used and depleted one another's energy. And you had been a functional, unnoticed cog in this machine your entire life without realizing it. Jung described this painful recognition as the persona shattering. The carefully constructed mask you wore to ensure everyone else's comfort finally fractured down the middle. You spent decades playing prescribed roles: the reliable son, the indispensable team player, the endlessly understanding partner. But beneath the surface of this manufactured identity, your authentic self was being choked. The suffocation reached a critical point. When the inability to breathe became intolerable, the persona inevitably shattered. Once you truly see this dynamic, there is no reverting to blissful ignorance. Reflect on a composite scenario drawn from Jung's consistent observations. Picture a man in his 30s, outwardly successful, a respectable career, a stable home, an active social calendar. By all conventional measures, his life is ideal. Yet internally, he is wasting away. Every conversation feels rehearsed. Each social gathering is an exhausting performance. He begins to notice patterns he previously dismissed. Friends appearing only when emotional labor or advice is required. Family members demanding loyalty while offering no reciprocal support. A partner who cherishes the role he plays, not the man he actually is. One day, something breaks, perhaps triggered by a final exhaustion or a sharp betrayal. Suddenly, he cannot maintain the facade. The mask drops and he walks away. No explanation, no drama, just gone. His friends assume he is having a crisis. His family deems him selfish. His partner believes he has lost his mind. But he hasn't lost anything. He has achieved something far greater. He has found his energy, his boundaries, and his true self. This is the pivotal moment when most men execute the cut. They retreat without warning or explanation, vanishing from their social sphere. And everyone left behind believes they have gone insane. But here is Jung's discovery. These men did not lose their mind. They found their energy. They realized their very life force was being harvested by psychological vampires. Every person in your life operates on an energy economy. They consume your attention, your emotional labor, your time, and your resources. And what do they return? Criticism, demanding expectations, judgment, and relentless demands. The needy family members who drain you with their problems, but disappear when you seek support. The narcissistic friends who ensure every interaction orbits their ego. The toxic workplaces that demand your soul in exchange for a paycheck. The intimate relationships where you give everything and receive only emptiness. You were a battery being systematically drained by your entire environment. Cutting them off is not cruelty, it is essential resource protection. Jung understood that dysfunctional relationships function essentially as parasitic systems. One party is conditioned to give relentlessly, while another takes without pause. Crucially, the giver is psychologically conditioned to accept this radical imbalance as the highest form of love, mistaking sacrifice without reciprocity for virtue and emotional depletion for true devotion. But it is not. It is psychological vampirism cloaked in the comforting rhetoric of intimacy. Once this dynamic is recognized, continued participation becomes impossible. But here is where this transformation becomes genuinely dangerous. When a man severs external ties, he is forced into the terrifying confrontation with himself, stripped of the distractions and the noise of others' demands. Jung named this process the shadow confrontation. All the suppressed elements of the self, the raw anger, the accumulated resentment, the legitimate darkness that were buried deep to maintain the peace begin to surface. The rage you swallowed for years to ensure tranquility, the ambitions you killed to allow others to feel secure, the necessary truths you silenced to avoid conflict. This phase destroys weaker men. Unable to bear the silence and the darkness, they flee back to the chaos, back to the distractions, back to the familiar role of everyone's emotional support animal. But strong men endure the darkness. They sit with what is revealed, and through that ordeal, they are fundamentally transformed. This is the dangerous consequence Jung warned about. A man who has successfully confronted his shadow cannot be controlled anymore. Empaths are not broken people. They are alchemists in the process of becoming. Let us examine the underlying psychological dynamics. In the constant company of others, you use their reactions as defining mirrors. Their approval signifies your goodness. Their disappointment confirms your flaws. Their needs provide structure to your life. Their drama lends you a superficial sense of purpose. You become addicted to being needed because being needed feels like mattering. But this is a psychological trap. You matter only to the role you play in their narrative. The moment you stop playing that role, they disappear. Isolation abruptly shatters these mirrors. Suddenly, you possess no external reference point for who you are. This precipitates what Jung called ego death. The constructed identity, built upon external opinions and societal expectations, begins to crumble. Underneath this collapsing facade, a man will discover one of two things: utter emptiness or profound authenticity. The weak find emptiness. Having performed for so long, they possess no internal core. They don't know who they are without an audience. But the strong find authenticity. They discover powerful, buried aspects of self, long suppressed by years of people-pleasing. And those parts are potent. The transformation proceeds through 4 distinct stages, a pattern Jung meticulously documented across hundreds of clinical cases. Stage 1. The pause. This is the cessation of motion. You cease people-pleasing. You stop automatically responding to every message and attending every event that drains you. You halt the pretense of caring about trivialities that bore you. You create critical space. Within this stillness, you begin the arduous task of recalling the self you were before the world dictated who you should be. This initial pause is deeply unsettling. You have spent your entire life in relentless motion, running toward expectations, fleeing disappointment, circling desperately to maintain exhausting relationships. Now you have stopped running. The stillness feels wrong. Your nervous system, accustomed to chronic stress, misinterprets peace as impending danger. Yet you remain in the pause, guided by the instinct that this stage is non-negotiable. Stage 2. The purge. This involves the systematic and deliberate removal of low-value contacts. The friend who only appears when they need something. Gone. The family member who leverages guilt to undermine your boundaries. Gone. Gone. The romantic partner who takes your loyalty for granted. Gone. This is not an act of cruelty. It is psychological surgery, excising the infection to allow the healthy tissue to regenerate. People will inevitably label you cold, selfish, or radically changed. Good. You are finally choosing yourself for the first time in your life. We see this dynamic clearly in the typical unfolding of the purge. A man starts by removing the obvious toxicity, the friend who constantly criticizes but never supports, the relative who always takes but never gives, the romantic interest who maintains distance without commitment. These cuts are relatively easy because the dysfunction is visible. However, the harder choices follow. The friends who are not toxic but add no substantial value. The family members who love him but offer no respect. People who would be fine in a settled life but become energetic drains when he is striving for growth. This is where most men stall. They eliminate the obvious vampires but retain the subtle ones, maintaining mediocre connections. These relationships keep them stuck because transformation requires energy. And if that energy is spent maintaining subpar connections, nothing remains for true growth. Therefore, the purge must be complete. Everyone who does not actively contribute to your evolution has to go, not necessarily forever, but for now, while you rebuild yourself from the ground up. Stage 3, the hermit phase, or the night sea journey. You do not merely disappear physically, you retreat psychologically. You cease engaging in superficial interactions. You stop seeking approval or offering explanations. You plunge into deep introspection. This is the crucible where the real work happens. You meticulously examine every belief inherited, every value unquestioned, and every identity worn as a costume. And you ask the single most important question: what do I actually want? Not what aligns with parental ambitions, not what society expects, and certainly not what makes you look good. Just the terrifying, naked truth of your own desire. Most men never reach this question. They are too busy performing for an audience that doesn't genuinely care. But you are alone now. There is no audience, just you and the truth. And the truth is terrifying, because perhaps you don't want what you've been chasing. Perhaps the life everyone told you to desire is not your life at all, and your soul has been dying quietly in the background. In this hermit phase, you start dismantling the psychological structures imposed on you. The career path that was really your father's unfulfilled ambition, the relationship template adopted from your mother's fairy tale, the social persona developed solely for childhood survival. Your entire identity is deconstructed. This is painful because you thought those costumes were you. Having worn them so long you forgot they were not your own skin. As you strip away these false layers, authentic structures emerge, genuine desires that belong to you, values that resonate in your core, interests that light you up instead of draining you. A real personality, unperformed. This is the man you have been seeking, not the impressive version, nor the acceptable one, but the real one, who has been buried under everyone else's expectations. Stage 4, the sovereign return. This stage marks the maturation of the boy into the man. After the solitude, the purge, and the confrontation with the shadow, you re-enter the world, but you are fundamentally different. You no longer require external validation. You understand your worth inherently, without anyone confirming it. You can be alone without succumbing to loneliness. You can give without being depleted. You can love without sacrificing the self. This is the man Jung defined as dangerous, not a threat to innocent people, but a danger to systems predicated on your compliance. Dangerous to relationships that require your silence. Dangerous to societies that need you small, manageable, and controllable. A man who does not seek approval cannot be manipulated. A man who does not fear loneliness cannot be threatened with abandonment. A man who has faced his own darkness cannot be shamed into submission. He becomes a psychological threat to the status quo. Think about it. Every system of control relies on your need for belonging. Governments control you through your fear of being outcast. Corporations control you through your fear of being unemployed. Families control you through your fear of being unloved. Relationships control you through your fear of being alone. But what happens when a man eradicates these fears? When he has already been alone and discovered it was not death, but freedom. When he has already been abandoned and realized he did not need them anyway. When he has already lost everything and found himself whole in the rubble. He becomes uncontrollable. This is why cutting everyone off is Jung's most dangerous discovery. Not because isolation is harmful, but because sovereign men pose a direct threat to systems built on dependence. Every empire needs slaves who believe they are free. Every religion needs believers who doubt themselves. Every toxic relationship needs someone willing to sacrifice themselves. And you just stopped playing that crucial role. But we must not romanticize this journey. The pain is undeniable. Loneliness arrives in fierce, 3 a.m. waves, prompting you to stare at the ceiling and wonder if you made a catastrophic mistake. You see happy groups of friends and feel that familiar ache of not belonging. You watch couples and remember the comfort of having someone. The doubt creeps in. Maybe you are the problem. Maybe you are too harsh. Maybe you truly are broken. Jung insisted that this specific pain is necessary. It is not the superficial ache of being physically alone. It is the burning necrosis of the false self. The version of you that required others to feel complete is dying. And death is agonizing. Yet, what emerges is worth the price. A sovereign being who doesn't need anyone, but can choose to be with people. A man who doesn't require validation, but can offer profound love. A man who stands alone, but is not lonely. The pain you feel right now is the unavoidable price of freedom. Here is the part nobody tells you. Most people retreat. They feel the fire and run back to the familiar relationships that drain them, back to friendships that diminish them, back to families that guilt them, back to the comfortable, known cage. Because the cage is familiar, and humans often prefer familiar pain to unknown freedom. But you remain, still reading, which means you are different. You are willing to pay the full price, to sit in the purifying fire until the false identity is fully consumed. Consider how this pattern appears throughout history. Think of the figures who withdrew from society before their greatest contributions. Men who isolated themselves in mountains and emerged with philosophical frameworks that reshaped civilization. Inventors who channeled their solitude into creations that powered the modern age. Leaders who ruled empires while maintaining an inner solitude, writing reflections that still guide humanity today. These were not antisocial hermits. They were men who understood the paradox. True power comes from not needing power. True connection comes from not needing connection. True love comes from not needing love. This is the central paradox. The less you need people, the healthier your relationships become. You stop choosing companions out of desperation. You no longer tolerate disrespect because you fear being alone. You stop settling for crumbs because you are starving for attention. When you are internally full, you can share without depletion. When you are whole, you can love without losing yourself. When you are sovereign, you give freely because nothing essential can be taken from you. Think about your life before the cut. How many relationships were built on genuine, mutual respect? How many were merely habit? How many were maintained purely out of obligation, guilt, fear of confrontation, or simple convenience? If you are honest, most were transactions cunningly disguised as connections. You performed your role, they performed theirs. Everyone pretended it meant something. But underneath, it was hollow, an empty dance without music. Now you are alone, and it is quiet. But in that quiet, something potent is growing. Your intuition is reawakening. The inner voice you muffled for so long, the one you quieted purely to gain approval, is finally speaking with clarity. Your primal instincts are honing themselves. Your personal boundaries are setting like concrete, and your standards are irrevocably climbing. You are reconnecting with your essential self, remembering precisely what you value, what brings you genuine joy, and what truly holds significance. Crucially, the baggage and expectations you shed are no longer even candidates for inclusion in this new, essentialized life. This period marks the absolute climax of your personal odyssey, the profound realization that solitude is not a deficit, but the singular crucible required to forge your authentic self. Not the manufactured persona others designed for you. Not the hollow self you perform solely for validation. Not the compromised version that bent and twisted itself into spaces too constrictive for your spirit. We are talking about your actual self, the one that thrives when the gaze of the world is absent, the one that asserts its desires without seeking external permission, the one whose strength is inherent, requiring no external validation or reinforcement to remain standing. This is the self that passes through the trial by fire and emerges undeniably stronger. The ache of loneliness you feel now is not the sign of emptiness. It is, paradoxically, a sign of extreme fullness. You are being inundated by every fragmented piece of yourself you were forced to suppress. The justified anger you swallowed, the sacred dreams you indefinitely postponed, the undeniable truths you evaded, the personal power you carelessly surrendered. All of it is now surging back. This influx causes pain because your system is unaccustomed to such density. You spent so long living in a state of carefully maintained hollowness that this sudden rush of wholeness feels disturbingly like drowning. But you are not drowning. You are undergoing a magnificent rebirth. This leads to the fundamental resolution Carl Jung discovered. The individual who consciously chooses to cut off external distractions has not succumbed to madness. He has, in fact, located his soul. This is the immutable piece of self that cannot be bought, sold, manipulated, or subjugated to external control. It is the unwavering core that exists independent of all outside opinions. The essence that remains when every superfluous layer has been stripped away. Most people never access this fundamental truth because they are relentlessly preoccupied with maintaining their curated image, perpetually performing, constantly people-pleasing, and desperately seeking belonging. You, however, chose to step off the stage, allowing your authentic soul the opportunity to finally articulate its truth. This withdrawal does not mandate permanent isolation. While some individuals find such profound and enduring peace in solitude that they never re-enter the social matrix, a perfectly valid choice, the vast majority utilize this phase as a necessary crucible, a high-pressure transformation chamber. They retreat completely, confront their internal landscape, integrate their repressed shadows, establish their sovereignty, and then, only then, do they choose to return. Crucially, they return strictly on their own terms. They select relationships that genuinely honor their newfound identity. They establish ironclad boundaries that proactively safeguard their energy. They interact exclusively with individuals whose energy aligns with their own. They meticulously construct lives that are a flawless reflection of their deepest held values. Upon your eventual return, the dynamics shift fundamentally. Others immediately sense the seismic difference. Because you no longer need their approval, they are rendered powerless to manipulate you. Because you no longer fear their judgment, their attempts to control you become meaningless. Because you do not require their validation, they have nothing left to leverage against you. You become wholly unmovable, absolutely unshakable, and profoundly solid, like a bedrock mountain range that withstands the fury of every storm without suffering even the slightest erosion. This state is what Jung termed dangerous, not in an aggressive or violent sense, but dangerous because you are completely, undeniably sovereign. And true sovereignty strikes terror into the hearts of those who derive profit, comfort, or status from your previous compliance. Your former friends will attempt to drag you back into the old dynamic. Your family may deploy guilt as a weapon. Past romantic partners will try to lure you back by tossing breadcrumbs of attention, hoping to reignite false hope. Society, sensing your deviation, will insist something is inherently wrong with you. Certain therapeutic trends may attempt to pathologize your newly enforced boundaries, and social media will work relentlessly to convince you that you are fundamentally missing out. But you possess a crucial truth they do not. You have intimately learned the exorbitant cost of belonging to people who consistently diminish your potential, and you are no longer prepared to pay that price. This constitutes the ultimate revelation of the Jungian process. Solitude is not the debilitating curse that society claims. The true curse lies in inauthenticity. The curse is accepting smallness. The curse is living perpetually controlled. The curse is maintaining fierce loyalty to those who have long forfeited the right to receive it. You shattered that generational curse the moment you chose total severance. You chose yourself, and that single act secured your salvation. If you currently inhabit this crucial phase, your only directive is to keep moving forward. Do not look back. Do not allow self-doubt to creep in. Do not let the temporary sting of loneliness trick you into believing you made an error. You made no mistake. You executed the most difficult, the bravest, and the single most necessary decision of your existence. You consciously selected truth over superficial comfort, freedom over manufactured belonging, and your essential self over the demands of everyone else. That foundational choice will resonate profoundly through the remainder of your life in ways you cannot yet fully grasp. The transformation reaches its own organic completion the moment you release the necessity for it to be complete, when you stop waiting for the single, definitive moment you will suddenly feel fixed. Understand this: you are not broken. You never were. You were simply buried alive, beneath a crushing weight of expectations that were never truly yours. Now you are meticulously excavating yourself, peeling back the layers of compliance, shedding mask after performative mask, dismantling lie by accepted lie, until the only thing left standing is what has always existed. You. Raw, utterly real, unfiltered, unapologetic, and fiercely sovereign. Jung dedicated his life to studying this precise phenomenon, which he defined as individuation, the rigorous, essential process of becoming who you authentically are, rather than remaining the person everyone else requires you to be. Most people fail to individuate. They die still wearing masks they never selected, playing roles they secretly despised, and living lives that fundamentally did not belong to them. But you took the road less traveled. You cut everyone away. You faced the paralyzing void. You learned the lessons of the silence. You confronted, named, and integrated your shadow. And you survived. This makes you dangerous in the most powerful sense of the word. Dangerous to falsehoods. Dangerous to manipulation. Dangerous to the oppressive systems that are entirely predicated upon your compliant smallness. Dangerous to anyone attempting to control you via the tools of shame, guilt, or fear. You have become immune to external control precisely because you have already endured and survived the worst things they can threaten you with: loneliness, abandonment, and social isolation. You journeyed through that darkness and realized it was not an ending, but a glorious, terrifying birth. So, what is the next step? First, you subscribe to this channel if you are ready to explore the subsequent dimensions of your inner psychology. Second, you must internalize the understanding that this journey is not a temporary phase, it is a profound transformation. And transformations, by their very nature, are permanent. You will not return to the person you were before, you literally cannot. That version of you is dead. In their stead stands an entity who is stronger, profoundly wiser, and completely liberated. Someone who understands that the apex of power is not needing to wield power, the deepest love is found in not requiring love, and the greatest life is lived entirely on your non-negotiable terms, never theirs. The individual who cuts away the noise and continues walking becomes the embodiment of everything Jung believed humanity was capable of achieving: conscious, sovereign, and irrevocably whole. And the world urgently requires more men of this caliber. Men who cannot be purchased, who cannot be broken, and who are impervious to control. Men capable of standing entirely alone without disintegrating. Men who can love deeply without sacrificing their essential identity. Men who give freely without becoming depleted. Men who instinctively know their worth without needing any external confirmation. You are this man. You only needed the requisite courage to walk away from every voice that told you otherwise. You located that courage. Now, keep walking. Keep transforming. Keep becoming. Because the world has absolutely no need for you to regress to who you were. The world needs you to fully manifest who you are becoming.